12 low-profile boats are already moving. The Caribbean off the northwestern coast of Cuba, a blockade line, and one Arleigh Burke-class destroyer holding station alone, hull cutting slow circles in 60-foot swells while radar sweeps paint the horizon every 3 seconds. Before we go any further, this is a hypothetical scenario, built entirely from real U.S. Navy capabilities and publicly documented tactics, for education. Nothing here is a news report. Everything here is the math of how a modern destroyer actually fights a swarm. Here's the question that matters. Can a single ship, even the best surface combatant in the world, actually stop 12 fast boats and 2 submarines running simultaneously? And if so, how? The answer is not what most people think. This ship is not going to fight with brute force. It is going to fight the way a chess grandmaster fights a mob, by collapsing their geometry before the mob even knows the game has started. Let us set the board. The destroyer is holding a blockade corridor roughly 40 nautical miles northwest of Havana. Its mission: interdict any fast surface craft or submerged low-profile vessel attempting to slip the line. The threat package has been building for 90 minutes on the ship's AN/SPY-6 radar, a rotating picture of surface returns, weather clutter, and the occasional contact that blinks in and out too fast to be a wave. 12 go-fast boats, each one between 25 and 32 feet of fiberglass and twin outboard engines screaming at 50-plus knots. Each one carrying a crew of 3, a cargo hold, and enough bulk to punch through the blockade line if even 2 or 3 slip past. Below the surface, 2 narco-submarines. Not full military submarines, but semi-submersible low-profile vessels, their freeboard barely 6 inches above the waterline, are running east of the boat group, trying to use the surface radar chaos as cover. The enemy's theory of victory is actually elegant. The swarm splits into 3 groups of 4, approaching from different bearings simultaneously. Each group forces the destroyer to track targets on a different quadrant. Meanwhile, the 2 semi-subs hug the surface clutter just outside the boat chaos, hoping the ship's radar operators are too busy watching 12 fast surface returns to notice 2 very quiet, very low signatures sliding underneath the noise floor. And here is the adversary's real edge, the one that makes this dangerous. Those go-fast boats sit so low in the water, sometimes less than 2 feet of freeboard, that the destroyer's AN/SPY-6 radar waves don't bounce cleanly off them inside about 5 nautical miles. The radar energy sails right over the tops of the hulls, scattered by wave clutter at that range. Think of trying to spot a skateboard lying flat on a rough gravel road from the roof of a 10-story building. You can see cars. You can see trucks. The skateboard disappears into the texture of the road. That is what sea clutter does to a low-profile fast boat at close range. The Mark 45 5-inch gun, the ship's primary surface weapon, has a different problem entirely. At close ranges, against a target moving at 50 knots on an erratic course, the gun's fire control solution is computed for a shell that takes several seconds to arrive. By the time the round gets there, the boat has jinked. The shells sail long. The gun is lethal at medium range against predictable targets. Against a swarm inside 3 miles, moving fast and unpredictably, it is nearly useless. So for a moment, just a moment, the swarm mathematically owns the inner ring. This is the window the adversary is betting on. But the U.S. Navy anticipated this problem 20 years ago. The answer is not a bigger gun. The answer is layering. 4 defensive rings, each one designed to solve a problem the previous ring could not. The first ring starts not on the ship. It starts in the air, 12 miles out, where an MH-60R Seahawk helicopter has been holding a wide orbit since before the swarm even left its staging point. The Seahawk carries its own multi-mode radar, the AN/APS-153. And it does not have the sea clutter problem the ship has, because it is looking down at the surface from above at an angle, which means its radar geometry against low-profile targets is completely different. From altitude, those go-fast boats light up clearly. The Seahawk's radar feeds its contact picture directly into the ship's combat system via Link 16 data link, the same encrypted tactical network that connects every U.S. Navy platform and theater. The destroyer's tactical action officer is watching a fused picture. Ship, radar, plus helicopter radar, combined, updating every 2 seconds. What the Seahawk sees, all 12 boats, sorted by bearing, speed, and estimated time to the blockade line. The narco-subs running just below the surface. Those are a different sensor problem, and we will come back to them. Most people assume the Seahawk is just a spotter. Here's what most people miss. The MH-60R is also carrying AGM-114 Hellfire missiles and APKWS guided rocket pods. APKWS. Advanced Precision Kill Weapon System. Take a standard 70mm unguided rocket, the kind that has been on military helicopters since Vietnam, and bolt a laser guidance kit onto the front. That kit costs roughly $25,000. The whole weapon, $25,000. The go-fast boat it is targeting costs approximately $40,000. And the laser kit turns what used to be an unguided area weapon into a precision strike with a circular error probable of under a meter. Here is the cost arithmetic that defines this entire engagement. One APKWS round at $25,000 versus one go-fast boat at $40,000. The defender spends less than the attacker to destroy the attacker's asset. When you are fighting a swarm of 12 boats, that math is the entire strategy. You are not trying to be powerful. You are trying to make the exchange rate work in your favor all day long. The Seahawk opens the engagement at 11 nautical miles, well outside the inner radar clutter zone, well outside effective small arms range from the boats. The crew is operating under rules of engagement for a declared blockade zone. The lead boat group, 4 contacts on bearing 027, has crossed the intercept threshold. First, APKWS round away. Laser spot locked. The rocket guides itself in 4 seconds. Gone. I spent time going through the documented use cases for APKWS in maritime environments, and one detail kept coming back. The weapon was originally designed for ground targets. The adaptation to small, fast surface craft, running trials off the coast, adjusting for target motion and wave interference. That work happened quietly, with very little public documentation. The capability arrived before the doctrine caught up. By the time the first boat goes dark, the Seahawk has already designated the second. The remaining 3 boats in the lead group are scattering, diverging course, accelerating, trying to complicate the geometry. That is exactly what the swarm is supposed to do. And that is exactly where the second ring takes over. The destroyer's 5-inch gun is useless at close range against a fast mover. But it is not useless at 7 miles against a fleeing contact on a predictable escape vector. As the Seahawk drives the lead group back, one of the 4 boats breaks hard east, running parallel to the blockade line, trying to find an opening. The Mark 45 engages. At 7 nautical miles, a shell that takes 6 seconds to arrive is meeting a target whose course and speed the fire control computer has been tracking for 40 seconds. Predictable trajectory. First round within 20 meters. Second round, adjustment fired automatically, detonates close enough to disable. Meanwhile, the 2 flanking boat groups, 8 remaining contacts, have used the engagement in the north as cover to push harder. They are now inside 6 nautical miles on 2 separate bearings, moving at full speed. This is the designed stress test. Split the defender's attention, force a choice. Here's the part that does not get talked about in public forums. The engagement sequencing at this point is not happening on the bridge. It is happening in the ship's Combat Information Center, the CIC, where the tactical action officer and a team of operators are running the entire fight through the Aegis combat system. The ship is not reacting. The ship has been building a firing solution on every contact since the Seahawk first passed targeting data at 11 miles. By the time the intergroups reach 6 nautical miles, Aegis already knows which weapon system is assigned to which contact, in what sequence, with what backup option if the first engagement fails. The human beings are supervising a decision tree that the system is executing in near real time. That is not science fiction. That is AN/SPY6+, Aegis Baseline 10+, Link 16. It is real, and it is the reason one ship can engage 12 targets without freezing. The second ring is the ship's own APKWS and deck-mounted weapons, and, critically, a second asset that most viewers forget the destroyer carries. Its own embarked Helicopter Plus in a layered blockade scenario, potentially a second MH-60R operating off a nearby support vessel feeding additional targeting data. The Seahawk that opened the engagement is already looping back, rearmed conceptually in our scenario, repositioning to cover the eastern group. What strikes me about this engagement is not the weapons. It is the information architecture. The swarm's entire strategy depends on overwhelming a single decision maker. One ship, one radar, one crew. The US answer is to multiply the decision nodes. The Seahawk is one node. The Aegis CIC is another. Link 16 ties them into a single coherent picture. The swarm is fighting one ship. The ship is fighting with the eyes of every platform in the network. Now, the narco-subs. This is the genuinely hard problem. A semi-submersible low-profile vessel running at 6 inches of freeboard produces almost no radar cross-section and almost no acoustic signature at low speed. It does produce a magnetic anomaly, a distortion in the local magnetic field caused by its metal hull and engine block, and it produces a faint acoustic return detectable by a dipping sonar system lowered to the right depth. The Seahawk, in its anti-surface role, can carry the AN/AQS 22 dipping sonar. In our scenario, the helicopter transitions from surface engagement, handing the remaining boat contacts to the ship's CIC, and drops its sonar array east of the main swarm track, where the two semi-subs were last estimated. The water here is warm Caribbean surface layer over a thermocline at roughly 60 feet, a thermal boundary that bends and reflects sound. The semi-subs are trying to run below the thermocline boundary where surface sonar loses resolution. They are betting the helicopter is too busy with the boats to reposition. Think of the thermocline like a one-way mirror in an interrogation room. Above it, you hear surface noise. Below it, you need to push the sonar below the glass to hear clearly. The Seahawk lowers its transducer below 60 feet and goes active. One ping. Just one. Both semi-sub contacts return a clear acoustic signature. Position, bearing, approximate speed. The data is on the Link 16 net within 4 seconds. Here's the question nobody asks until this moment. The submarine contacts are found. The boat swarm is being systematically reduced ring by ring. But what happens to the boats that actually reach the inner ring? The ones that make it inside 3 nautical miles before the system can engage them? That is where the 3rd and 4th rings live. And the answer is a weapon that most people fundamentally misunderstand. 3 nautical miles. 2 boats from the Eastern Group have used the southern approach vector, staying low, using wave clutter and the engagement noise from the Northern Group as distraction. They are inside the Mark 45's effective close-range engagement envelope. They are inside the Seahawk's current operating radius because the helicopter repositioned for the sonar drop. For approximately 90 seconds, those 2 boats own the inner ring. This is the designed worst case. The enemy knew this window existed when they planned the swarm. The geometry is real. The 3rd ring answers it. The ship's secondary weapons, a combination of deck-mounted M242 Bushmaster 25mm cannons and the close-in surface engagement capability of the ship's own crew-served mounts, can engage surface contacts inside 2 miles. These are not precision weapons. They are volume weapons, high rate of fire, tracer-guided, designed for exactly this scenario. A fast mover inside the radar-cluttered dead zone, visible to the naked eye and deck cameras, moving at 50 knots on a closing course. 1 boat takes fire at 1,800 meters. The outboard engines are exposed. Fiberglass hull, external propulsion. At 25 millimeter, the engines are the target, not the hull. Engine destroyed. Boat loses propulsion, drifts. The second boat turns. It is now running parallel, not closing. Still a threat, but its window of lethality is closing with each second it spends not charging. The ship's CIC has already handed it back to the repositioning Seahawk. APKWS designates at 2.5 miles. 3rd engagement, 4 seconds. Gone. Put yourself in the position of the swarm's operational commander for a moment. You plan this geometry perfectly. The radar blind zone is real. The gun limitation is real. The split attention problem is real. And yet, every boat that hits the inner ring has been anticipated, tracked, handed off between weapons systems, and engaged before it can close to weapons range. The plan that worked on paper is collapsing because the Defender is not one system. It is a layered network that never lets a contact exist in a gap between sensors for more than a few seconds. What's most surprising about this engagement is not the weapons. It's that the most important shot of the entire fight was fired from the Seahawk at 11 miles, before most viewers would even have called it a battle. By the time the inner ring boats made their move, the swarm had already been reduced from 12 contacts to 5. The outer rings did the work. The inner rings just cleaned up. The swarm is broken. But the 2 narco-subs are still in the water, and the rules of the blockade are clear. Interdiction means inspection, not destruction. What happens next is the other half of this operation. And it is, in some ways, harder than the shooting. The Seahawk holds sonar contact on both semi-subs. The ship's VLASROC, vertical launch anti-submarine rocket, is loaded and assigned. The tactical action officer has a solution. The submarine crews know they have been found. The active sonar ping made that clear. The question now is whether they surface voluntarily for boarding or whether the engagement escalates. Here's the thing about a semi-submersible narco-submarine in a declared blockade zone that has just watched 12 surface escorts get systematically reduced by a single destroyer and its helicopter. The crew does the arithmetic. They surface. Both contacts breach within 4 minutes of each other. The boarding team, a VBSS unit, visit board search and seizure, deploys from the destroyer in a rigid, inflatable boat. The semi-subs are secured. The blockade holds. Here's the take that will probably get us some pushback. The two narco-subs were always the easier problem. A semi-submersible cannot outrun a helicopter, cannot hide from a dipping sonar that knows exactly where to look, and cannot fight back in any meaningful way against a ship with a VLASROC loaded and a crew that has already demonstrated it will engage. The real test of this engagement was always the surface swarm, and specifically the inner ring problem. The debate worth having is whether the current APKWS inventory, combined with the Seahawk's magazine depth, is sufficient against a larger, more sophisticated swarm. 12 boats is a real-world narco or paramilitary threat. A state-level swarm, 50 boats, coordinated with some carrying anti-ship weapons, changes the math significantly. That numbers limit is real, and the US Navy knows it. So here's the question worth putting in the comments. At what swarm size does this layered defense start to saturate? Is it 50 boats? 80? And does the answer change if the boats are armed with shoulder-fired anti-aircraft weapons that complicate the Seahawk's ability to loiter and engage? Drop your number below. We read every one. Let us run the final accounting. 12 fast attack boats engaged. The Seahawk accounted for 6 contacts with APKWS at an average cost of $25,000 per engagement round. The Mark 45 engaged 2 fleeing contacts at medium range. Deck-mounted secondary weapons handled 1 inner ring contact. The Seahawk's APKWS closed on the last inner ring boat. 2 semi-submersibles located by dipping sonar surfaced under the implicit threat of VLASROC boarded. Blockade intact. Total expenditure on the surface engagement. 6 APKWS rounds at $25,000 each equals $150,000. 2 Mark 45 fire missions. Secondary weapons ammunition, against a threat package that cost the adversary in the neighborhood of $500,000 to assemble and launch, and is now entirely gone. That is the cost exchange victory. The defender spent roughly 30 cents for every dollar the attacker spent. Here's the part that doesn't make sense on the surface until you think it through. The Phalanx CIWS, the ship's last-ditch close-in weapon, the rotating 20mm Gatling that fires 4,500 rounds per minute, never fired in this engagement, not once. And that is actually the sign that everything worked correctly. Phalanx is the 4th ring. If Phalanx fires in a boat swarm engagement, it means rings 1 through 3 have failed, and contacts are inside 1,000 meters. You do not want to fire Phalanx. You want Phalanx loaded and ready as the thing that guarantees the adversary has no margin for error. Its existence compresses the decision calculus for every boat crew that makes it to the inner ring. You can close to 1,000 meters if you survive everything else, and then 4,500 rounds per minute fill the air around you. It doesn't need a direct hit. The proximity-fused rounds shatter the nose into thousands of fragments, like a giant shotgun blast at point-blank range. The boat crew knows this. That knowledge affects their behavior at ranges the gun never fires. A deterrent that never fires is still doing its job. Here's something we cut from this breakdown for length. What this engagement looks like against a swarm that includes boats carrying man-portable air defense systems. Shoulder-fired missiles that complicate the Seahawk's ability to loiter and engage freely. That is a genuinely different tactical problem. Comment SEAHAWK if you want that breakdown next. 1 destroyer, 12 boats, 2 narco-subs. The blockade held. Not because the ship was the most powerful thing in the water, but because it was the most connected node in a layered network that never let a threat exist in a sensor gap for more than a few seconds. The final insight here is not about weapons. It is about the cost exchange that makes layered defense viable. An APKWS round at $25,000 defeating a $40,000 boat means the defender is building equity with every engagement. The adversary burns their entire swarm, and the defender still has a working ship, a rearmed helicopter, and a Phalanx that never had to fire. Scale that math to 100 engagements, and the side with the layered network wins a long fight on economics alone, before we even get to tactics. The muscle mindset. More boats, bigger waves, brute saturation, runs into an information mindset that pre-solves every geometry the swarm can offer. The swarm lost before the first boat crossed the 12-mile mark. If you want to understand how the other side, the swarm operators, would evolve this tactic to push the saturation limit, that is the next breakdown. Subscribe and you will not miss it. And drop your swarm size number in the comments. At what point does this one ship run out of answers?